Today we'll be talking about, yes, audio interfaces. Like this one, like the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, because I get questions about audio interfaces all the time, and I know most folks know the basics, but I thought I would cover off on a few things. What is an audio interface? Should you look for in an audio interface? What alternatives there are to an audio interface, and where do you buy them? So let's jump in and talk about those right now. So, what is an audio interface? So, all you need to know about audio interfaces is it's like the sound card in your PC, but on steroids. It's a souped up version of it. So similar to your sound card, it has the ability to input. So it's got microphone or line inputs, has the ability to output to speakers or to headphones, and it processes audio. It does what's called analog to digital and digital to analog recording. So if you've got a Mac or a PC, it should be pretty familiar to you, because instead of using the headphone socket and the microphone socket that's either built into your laptop, which is your sound card, or in a separate sound card slot on your PC, you're using this. You plug it in via USB these days. Back in the day, there were Firewire versions. There are now Thunderbolt versions of audio interfaces, but your majority of your consumer level audio interfaces will be USB. They'll use a USB B to A cable like this, or some of the newer ones will use a USB-C cable. So that is how you connect it up. Now, if you're using an iPhone or an iPad, you will need, say it along with me, the folks who've been here a lot, you'll need a lightning, well, I turned my torch on. You'll need a lightning to USB 3 adapter to go along with your audio interface. That's because your phone, if you're using an iPhone or an iPad, uses lightning. It doesn't use USB, so you need to be able to adapt that. If you're using a newer iPad, then you'll need a USB-C to USB adapter. So all of those are available. And all of these things are available over on my gear guide. So if you jump over to studiolivetoday.com/gear, that's where you'll find all the recommendations of which audio interfaces I recommend, as well as all the gear like your adapters that you'll need to get things connected up. So that's the basics. Let's jump in and talk about what to look for. Number one, you need inputs. So this one here is your pretty standard configuration. So the reason I'm holding this one up, the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, is it has two inputs. And the beauty of this is that these are called combo jacks. So these take a 1/4 inch input or an XLR microphone input. So what we can hook up to this is either two microphones on your channel 1, channel 2. We can hook up two guitars, so on your left and your right channel, 2/4 inch. Or we can flick these switches over to line input, and then we can put a line level signal into here. So if you've got a stereo keyboard or anything like that, you can actually use that. So if you want the most flexibility, you'll need something like this. Now, other interfaces may have separate connections. So here's another one. This is an old Tascam one that I used to use, the US 125. And you can see on the back here that this one has an XLR and it has a separate instrument jack. So no ability to put a stereo line input into this. So you'll get a lot of interfaces like this that just have the one microphone input and the one instrument input. So these aren't going to be any good for your stereo devices, but they will be good if you're just recording a guitar and a vocal at once, or a vocal and a mono instrument that's going into there. But if you want the ability to do both, you'll need something with stereo inputs or two combo jacks like this. Most popular ones are things like this, the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2, or what I use, which is the Steinberg UR22C, which I'm not holding up because it's over there. It's plugged in all the time because I use it all the time. What else do you need to look for when you're checking it out? Well, outputs. So outputs are how you hear the audio. All of your audio interfaces are going to have a headphone output, and they'll all usually also have the ability to output via left and right stereo. Now, the thing to look for here is your higher end interfaces will have balanced TRS outputs. Some of your lower end ones will have RCA. So those are those red and white ones. They are unbalanced. So you get better quality audio, better stability, or what am I saying? Better noise from the audio in a balanced TRS output. And again, all have headphone jack. Some of your larger interfaces that maybe have 4 channels might have 2 different headphone jacks. So if you need to record multiple people, keep an eye out for that, because you may want a second headphone jack. What is the difference though? like let's get down to brass tacks here, because you can spend anything from, $50 to $70 for something like the Tascam. You can go up to 100 or 150 for a Focusrite. Some of the Steinberg interfaces are 200, 250. And then you can go up to things like the Audient and the Apollo, and these are getting into the $500, $600, $700 range. So what is the difference? Why would you actually buy a better one? I always equate this to a bottle of wine, and that is that the difference between a $5 bottle of wine and a $20 bottle is significant. But the difference between a $20 and a $100, you really need to be a wine connoisseur. I like that word, connoisseur, to know the difference. So keep that in mind with your audio interfaces as well. Once you hit around that to $150 to $200 mark, you're getting 24-bit audio, up to 192 kilohertz sampling rate. That is pretty good. You're getting some high quality preamps here, and you're getting good quality analog to digital and digital to analog converters. You're getting a quality device. The difference is, as you go up, you just get better and better. So in terms of what is actually different, it's usually two things. The preamp. So the preamp just means the microphone input, and being able to dial up your preamp to get a nice, healthy signal in without any noise being introduced is super important. So the higher end interfaces usually have better, or what we call quieter, preamps. So the mic preamps are going to give you a better signal with less noise. The other thing is the analog to digital and digital to analog conversion. So obviously, when you plug in an analog device, it needs to turn that into ones and zeros that the computer is going to understand as digital audio. And the better devices do that better. They're still going to turn it into ones and zeros, but they're going to be better quality ones and zeros, if that makes sense. So they're going to make sure that you get the most accurate representation of the analog signal that you're plugging in to the front of the interface. So when people say, Pete, why would I buy a $500 interface over a $200 one? That's the main reason. It's to do with the quality of the preamps and the quality of the analog to digital and digital to analog conversion. One final thing I want to mention about audio interfaces is to ensure that if you're using it with an iPhone or iPad, that it is class compliant. Class compliant simply means it can run without the use of drivers. This is important because some of your really high-end interfaces need their own custom drivers. So they'll only work with a Mac or a PC, whereas most of your consumer level and even your prosumer grade stuff will work with iOS. Check the box, see if it says something like iOS compatible or class compliant. Finally, what are some alternatives? Well, if you're on an iPhone or an iPad, you can use an analog device like the old iRigs, or like what I recommend, which is a Tascam, what's the name of that thing? I can't remember the name off the top of my head now. IXZ. So you can use an analog device to record into. That's going to introduce a bit more noise, but you're not going to need all the different converters. So if you just want to use something that plugs into your headphone jack, you can use something like that. You can also use a mixer. So you can use a stereo mixer and be able to record stereo audio, or there's a whole lot of new hybrid mixers that are combining the benefits of a mixer and an audio interface together, which are good options. And once again, all of these, all of the gear that I recommend, all the gear that I use is over here, studiolivetoday.com/gear. And you can check out the complete gear guide. And all of that is tested and is class compliant. So you don't have to worry that you're going to get it. And if you're using an iPhone or an iPad like I do, then you'll know that it's going to work for you. So there you go. Your 10-minute crash course into audio interfaces. If you knew nothing, you now know something. And if you already knew something, maybe you picked up a tidbit or two along the way.